Joining me is co-founder and director of the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, Albert Veksler. This is quite a number of years that you have been spearheading this very important effort. Thank you for joining me at the Media Line. Albert, you have a major event coming up in New York. It's something that you seem to do regularly throughout the world, gathering people, bringing interesting politicians from Israel, talking about the core issues. Coming into, at that point, in September, 11 months into the war between Israel and Hamas, what is the main focal point of the conference that you're holding?
Elise, first of all, thank you for having me. I think what we face this United Nations General Assembly, 79th Assembly, is a diplomatic tsunami. Many maybe haven't noticed, but the International Court of Justice passed an advisory decision, which basically says that Jewish presence in Judea and Samaria, East Jerusalem, and of course Gaza is illegal. And so they're going to be pushing to make the United Nations General Assembly to adopt it. So making the Jewish presence in Judea, Samaria, East Jerusalem, Gaza criminal, that's their agenda. Now, not everybody is happy about it. There are many dissenting voices. There are even in the court. They were among the nations. Not everybody is happy. But I think what is important for us is to, so to say, bring those representatives of all these nations to stand in the gap for their nation and for Israel and say, look, we are not agreeing with what our governments are planning to do. We cannot look at this, how they are just sending our ambassadors to UN to just bash and condemn Israel all the time. I mean, Israel was condemned 14 times last year, while the rest of the world, with all the culprits, I mean, all the human rights and international law trespassers were only condemned 7 times. So this is outrageous. And I think it is very important that we gather all the nations, but not only that, United States, we want to see representatives from every state, every major city. And that's our task this time, to counter that diplomatic tsunami that we are facing and to bring in an alternative United Nations.
Do you feel that you can have impact? Because so far it hasn't worked, as you well see.
Well, I think even a dissenting voice is an impact. Even making your voice heard, while a majority, automatic majority against Israel, which has been, for decades, the very signature of United Nations, I think even making our voice heard makes an impact. And moreover, we are there to pray together. And I think this is the most important part, that we are bringing the Jewish community and Christian community together. So the Jewish leadership from New York, the Board of Rabbis, they will be represented, Rabbi Potasnik, Rabbi Foreman. We're bringing a delegation of rabbis from Israel, Tuli Weiss and Yehuda Glick, and of course, most important, our Knesset members. And this year we also have 2 of our cabinet members, ministers coming. Gila Gamliel will speak for us, and Amichai Shikli. And so it's going to be very, very special time. Moreover, we have the New York State Senator, Rob Ort. He's our host. He's the one inviting and welcoming the Israeli delegation to New York. And of course, we have Congressman Mark Green and other congressmen. I just can't remember all the names right now, but they have confirmed they're coming, and it's going to be a very high level gathering.
Israel's ambassador to the United Nations is supposed to be attending, and I think that's an important point in light of what you are trying to accomplish. And also, he will have basically just stepped back in those shoes. It's a recent reappointment.
Exactly. Dani Danon has been a friend of many years, our paths crossed in 2009. We had a conference in Sweden where he spoke, and then in 2018 he also spoke at Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast at Florida. He was our keynote speaker at Orlando JPB. And of course, it is a big opportunity for Danny to announce to all the friends of Israel and to the media that he's back. He's back in the UN, and he's going to be back in the lion's den. I remember I made this joke for him. I said, look, Daniel, the prophet, he spent just one night at the lion's den, but you work there. So he seemed to like it. So he had his book title in the lion's den. And of course, David Friedman will be with us, our consul, Ofira Kunis, will be there. We have invited Mike Herzog, our ambassador. There will be high-level political leaders, and we will see some international delegates as well. We have now Denmark represented, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Italy will be represented, Germany. Just trying to remember all the countries where people have registered from, and it's going to be interesting.
I want to step back to what the organization, the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, was involved in before the war, because some of the things that you have helped cultivate were relationships between countries, whether they be in Europe and around the world, some of them to embrace opening embassies in Jerusalem, others just to embrace just the standing with Israel itself. If you can sort of expand upon what the goals are of the organization, because it's not just about getting together to pray, which is important, but it's also equally important to understand the geopolitics of what happens beneath the surface.
Absolutely. Well, the main goal, of course, is to create a dialogue between the Jews and the Christians. And what we see throughout the history, Felice, is something very interesting. We see that these type of friendships have literally changed the history. I mean, we can talk about Theodor Herzl, a journalist. Really, this is how he started. And William Hechler, who was a pastor. And their friendship actually opened the doors to the German nobility. I mean, it was Hechler's contacts to the German nobility that allowed Herzl to reach out to Wilhelm the second Kaiser of Germany, to reach out to the Turkish Pasha, to reach out to Russian the Pleve, pleading with him to stop the pogroms. And we saw how the nations rejected their vision of creating the Jewish protectorate under, like German protectorate for the Jews in Turkey. The only ones who heeded were the British. And so from there on, we have of course, Lord Balfour, and we have Weizmann working together. That friendship, again, the fruit of that friendship is Balfour Declaration and the British mandate that the League of Nations then affirmed. And you can go on and on and on. We can talk about the friendship of Truman and Eddie Jacobson. I mean, the Truman administration didn't want to hear much from the Jewish community before the rebirth of the Jewish state. But because of his friendship with Eddie Jacobson, he listened to his advice, and he had a meeting with Weizmann, and then he ended up, of course, endorsing and recognizing the newly born state of Israel 11 minutes after that Ben-Gurion had done it. And so we can go on and on and on. Begin was very powerful and strong. Even Ben-Gurion, I mean, he opened a conference, an international Pentecostal conference about end-time prophecy in Jerusalem, and the government even paid for this. It was the early years. And so these type of relationships have literally changed the history. And I really think that what we have seen throughout these 8 years that we've been working since President Rivlin endorsed the idea, and Robert Ilatov went through all the Knesset and asked his colleagues' advice how I can proceed and go forward with this idea. We've seen some remarkable things. I mean, we've seen the Holocaust survivors' reparation monies released in Holland. We've seen how I mean, in Italy, the group of politicians that was led by Giorgia Meloni in 2021 and Matteo Salvini, senator, and Simone Pillon and Lucio Malan, how they came with the support suddenly, you know, they'd never done it before, to the Senate, Italian Senate library when we had the opening of Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast. And I still remember the words of Matteo Salvini, how he said that it is the right thing for Italy to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel because the Jewish people and Jerusalem are inseparable. And then he said that when his term comes, when his time comes, he will move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And lo and behold, exactly a year later, Giorgia Meloni and Matteo Salvini form the cabinet. And Lucio Malan is tasked, you know, with several important roles in these decisions, and I'm just, you know, expectant to see whether they will fulfill their promise. We can also have the sad story from Brazil, you know, the Brazilian former president Bolsonaro, who did promise, made his campaign promise to move the embassy. And I was there. We were there when he needed our support, and we were there supporting his son. And then before he was inaugurated, and then right before the elections, we were there, and he did not fulfill his promise. He did not do what he promised, and that was a very, very sad thing to see. And I was actually sitting with some high-level people this morning, and they said this was, in their opinion, this was the reason why they lost the elections, because he didn't make his promise good. And I mean, we can go on and on and on. I mean, we have 21 cities, Felice, we've been having the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast. In every place we have something miraculous that we can look back and say, look, what happened when the Jewish community and Christian communities came together.
This year has been very different, Albert. You know, a war that has ripped Israel apart internally on many levels, a war where you've seen anti-Semitism throughout the world. Israel's not in the same place that it was a year ago. Everything that was sitting, simmering is above surface. So if I asked you right now, if you had to look at the coming year, coming to a war, hopefully, I'll say hopefully, winding down on multiple fronts, and no one knows this for sure, what would be your 3 points of things you would like to accomplish with your organization, whether it was getting certain countries to move their embassies, or it was trying to get Judeo-Christian values tighter? What were you aiming for?
Felice, when we look at the world, we see about 600 million evangelical Christians that are potential supporters of Israel because we read the same book. And my goal is to see how all of these people would be united under loving Jerusalem, praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and standing with Israel. Now, what we have in our plans, in very practical terms, is another Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast in Copenhagen this year, and then next year in Norway. I mean, we have heard, of course, about the rise of anti-Semitism in Scandinavia, in particular in Norway, and I think it's the best answer to go there and to bring unity between the Jewish community and the Christian communities, and to stand on this common ground and say, here we are, and nothing will move us. This is what God covenanted for the Jewish people, and this is what we believe, and this is what we will do. We will stand together.
The Christian community is divided just as much as the Jewish community is divided. When you try to engage those in the Christian community that may come from a different school of thought when it comes to Israel. Do you find it effective? Do you find that you are able to change hearts and minds?
Felice, you're absolutely right. We see a lot of division, but it's an interesting thing. Jerusalem actually unites. And you can see at even our events in Jerusalem and worldwide how people come together that would otherwise not even meet each other. So Jerusalem, how crazy as it sounds, actually unites people all over the world. So we see tremendous success in these terms.
Albert, you have lived in Israel, lived through the war, seen for your own eyes so many stories that have happened in these last few months, very difficult times for the state of Israel. When you look back and look at it from whether it's a biblical perspective or a personal perspective, what stands out most? What do you look at and reflect on and think, well, this made me stronger. This made me more upset about where people are. What stood out?
Elise, our children have been in Gaza, and this experience have been very traumatic in many ways for many families. But at the same time, I remember hearing from the older generation that they had to apologize before this younger generation that was now fighting in Gaza, because they thought that they would not be as strong or as determined or showing such resolve. And I think what we have seen is this great resolve and unity that has come from that level, from the Israeli society. Yes, the political divide is there. Yes, the painful misunderstandings are still there. Yes, there are horrible, horrible sacrifices that have been made. But I think there is something new that will be birthed out of this new generation. We will see a whole new leadership emerge, and I'm really expectant and happy to see how these young new leaders will change the face of Israel.
Albert Veksler, co-founder and director of the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast, thank you so much, and best of luck with the conference that's coming up in New York.
And thank you, Felice, and see you soon in New York.
I look forward.